Leaders of the Nordic nations are gathering for a regional security summit in Finland. Top of the agenda is the growing threat to NATO members from Russia. Finland and Sweden both joined the alliance only after the invasion of Ukraine.
Finland is reinforcing its 1,300-kilometer frontier with Russia, but the border fence it's building to keep out potential waves of migrants sent by Moscow wouldn't be much use against a military incursion. The Kremlin apparently wants Helsinki to believe that's possible, announcing when Finland joined NATO that the number of troops on the border will be tripled. And now, at the bases nearest to the Finnish border, it appears preparations are being made for those reinforcements. Satellite images show some 130 military tents erected earlier this year at the Kamenka base, about 60 kilometers from Finland.
Their presence basically indicates a growing need for accommodation for a growing number of soldiers and military activity as a whole.
Former Finnish military intelligence chief Pekka Toveri says Finns are never afraid, just aware of the ambitions of Russia.
Now they are messaging, but their long-term plan is to be strong enough to challenge the West, and that's why they will increase the forces in their western borders, so that they can actually take advantage of the situation and go from threatening to actual actions if needed.
Toveri, now a member of the European Parliament, is still confident Russia wouldn't be able to mount a sustained attack on a NATO country while it's fighting hard in Ukraine. But when I asked NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte for his reaction to these developments, he had a whole list of concerns, not related specifically to the Finnish border, he said, but to what these actions indicate about Russia's ability to continue boosting its military while waging war. He said it's happening even faster than had been predicted.
They produce 4 times as much ammunition as the whole of NATO is producing as we speak. They're reconstituting their armies. Their whole economy is on a war footing.
That same effort may well go into upgrading the bases near the Finnish border, like Kamenka.
Fighter jets likely can't operate from the base yet. There needs to be some more renovation projects. But I assume that's probably the goal, to also put that into full use.
Pekka Toveri maintains Finland and its allies can handle whatever the Kremlin throws at them.
We are not worried in Finland. We know what's happening now close to our borders. We have good defense capabilities. We are prepared with our allies to react if needed.
Raising tensions over tents, Toveri says, would give Moscow a psychological advantage it doesn't deserve.
DW's Teri Schultz found that report, and I asked her earlier whether Russian activity along the border with Finland is setting off alarm bells across NATO.
Not yet. Definitely no signs of panic from these satellite images. In fact, I should point out that there was one taken later than the one you saw in my piece, where those tents had been taken down or moved. So it's really not clear what Russia is doing on this Kamenka base or these other bases near the Finnish border. It may say that it's simply preparing for joint military exercises with Belarus that will happen in mid-September, the Zapad exercises. At the same time, frontline countries know that as soon as there's a ceasefire with Ukraine, Russia will send resources back up to the border to at least make these countries think that it's capable of staging an incursion should it want to. At the moment, though, no signs of that, no signs of panic. It takes a lot to make these Nordic countries nervous.
Now, this is all in the run-up to the NATO summit in about a month's time. Are the other 31 NATO members expecting a kind of a showdown on defense with Donald Trump there?
They're doing everything possible to avoid that. I would say it's the #1 aim of the Hague summit not to have a fight with Donald Trump. And toward that end, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is discussing with allies how to raise their defense spending limits. As we know, that's the #1 priority of Donald Trump. He's talking to them about how to get their budget spending up to at least 3.5% of GDP. That's up from the last pledge of 2%. And then there's talk that sort of 1.5% more of GDP could be used to account for other kinds of defense spending, perhaps conscription, aid to Ukraine, renovating equipment that they haven't counted elsewhere, so that they would be able to say to Donald Trump, we're spending 5% of GDP on defense. That seems to be the goal at the moment, and the Trump administration has said it won't settle for anything less.
Now, Germany's new Chancellor Friedrich Merz is headed to Finland, not usually one of the first countries that a new German Chancellor visits. What do you think is behind this decision?
As you mentioned earlier, the Nordic prime ministers are meeting there, so he has the chance on this visit to meet 8 of his counterparts. So that's a good use of his time. These are countries that are very strong military countries. They're mostly committed to spending more than 3% of their GDP. And now that Merz is saying he's going to spend 5%, however he gets there, and that he's going to create the strongest conventional army in Europe, there's a lot to talk about with like-minded countries. I also think he's looking forward to talks with Finnish President Alexander Stubb, who's had numerous conversations and even some in-person visits with President Trump. So Chancellor Merz could well be getting some insights from all of these Finnish and Nordic leaders on this trip.
DW correspondent Teri Schultz there reporting from Brussels. Thank you, Teri.